So I caught myself pacing the balcony at dawn, coffee in hand, replaying the wildest late night call that I've ever had all year. Now, picture it. There's me in a fuzzy kind of slipper, my old kind of university buddy, Dr. Y, now a celebrated blockchain professor, insisting that XRP has already kind of fired its last rocket at $3.40 and is doomed to fizzle. Now, here's kind of rattling off equations, and I'm staring at the sunshine thinking, there's no way that the story ends here. Now, this might just shock you, but I am not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. Your investments are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. So, why should you hang around here today? Well, it's because what kind of started as maybe a bit of a friendly banter, it turned into a full-blown kind of treasure hunt for the real ceiling of XRP's current cycle. And spoiler alert, the numbers on my whiteboard, they don't stop at $3.40. Now, I'm kind of talking double digits, maybe even kind of the mid-20s, and the breadcrumbs that kind of led us there are scattered everywhere, from kind of wartime headlines to dusty Nostro Vostro ledgers that nobody talks about at cocktail parties. Okay, so let me rewind. Back in uni, Dr. Y wrote the code, right? I gave the presentations, and we both kind of bagged top grades. You fast forward a decade, and he's still crunching code under the fluorescent lights. I'm hunting market sentiment like a kind of bloodhound, and he rings me up, voice buzzing with that kind of eureka tone, arguing that the January spike to $3.40 was the big finale. Now, my immediate reaction here was, dude, you're staring at the engine and you're missing the road trip. He fires off some macro fears, wars, soaring US debt, shifting geopolitical power as if they are, kryptonite to bullish dreams. So I can almost see the kind of doom loop headlines scrolling in his eyes at this point. But markets, they are not spreadsheets. They're amusement parks powered by raw emotion. So one kind of whiff of opportunity and the crowd rushes to the gates. Now ask any roller coaster operator, you measure the ride in screams, not in steel bolts. So here is where the story gets juicy then, right? I slide my phone onto speaker. I pop open my laptop and we pull up EGRAG Crypto's latest breakdown. The man's chart looks like a staircase on steroids, aiming straight for the $10 to $27 territory. Now, Dr. Y scoffs, right? That defies fundamental value. I grin. That's exactly because fundamentals are only half of the tale. And the other half is FOMO, narrative, and yes, a sprinkle of absolute madness. So we dive into the tokenization, the buzzword that kind of makes regulators sweat and venture capitalists foam at the mouth. Now, global equities, roughly $100 trillion, just waiting, to be sliced into bite-sized digital shares that you could trade while kind of waiting in line for coffee. Derivatives, try $600 trillion, a figure that's so huge it makes my calculator beg for mercy. And real estate, $280 trillion worldwide. That's still, closed off behind kind of mountains of paperwork and middlemen. Now, you crack the market open and suddenly buying a slither of Manhattan is as easy as buying a meme coin on your lunch break. Dr. Y kind of mumbles about theoretical potential, but I'm already on a mental road trip through every untapped sector on EGRAG's list. Art and collectibles, 1.7 trillion of dusty masterpieces, waiting for digital passports. Debt instruments, another $250 trillion, yearning for transparent ledgers. Intellectual property, another $5 trillion ripe for frictionless licensing. We even drifted into the music rights, supply chains, healthcare data, gaming skins, and energy credits. Each category is a locked vault, and blockchain is jingling a master key. Now, Picture XRP stepping into that intense, highway, connecting all of these shiny tokenized exits together. One glance at the $27 trillion kind of marooned in Nostro Vostro accounts for cross-border payments, and my palms get sweaty. Why? It's because XRP captures even just a slice of that liquidity. 340 looks less like a cycle top and more like a warm-up act. Now, at this point, Dr. Y hits me with his kind of knockout punch. But what if you're wrong? XRP could crash 85%, maybe to 42 cents, right? Imagine the carnage. Now, I almost kind of dropped my mug, but not from fear, but actually from excitement, because an 85% dump from, $24 lands you right back at the $3 range. In other words, the catastrophic kind of crash that he's worried about is literally today's comfort zone dressed up in a horror mask. So I'm lean in, I whisper like we're kind of kids, scheming a prank, and think beyond the chart. Think sentiment. Right, markets swing on stories, remember? And you got to remember that everyone kind of hoarded toilet paper at one point, right? And it's the same psychology. If investors believe then tokenization is the golden ticket to unlock trillions of dollars, then they're going to chase the asset that greases the gears. That's XRP's storyline, and it's juicier than the Marvel reboot. And hey, speaking of unlocking value, if you want to kind of nerd out on this stuff in real time with a bunch of sharp minds, jump into our free educational Discord server. There's a link in the description down below. The door is totally open and it's completely free. That's kind of where I park raw charts, rants, and occasionally dad jokes when the candles get a little bit too bloody. Meanwhile, of course, Dr. Y is still skeptical, so I pivot. Let's play a game, I say. Imagine we're NASA engineers, but instead of shooting rockets, we're launching price targets. Stage 1, XRP revisits $3.40 to prove the January burst wasn't a fluke, but a rehearsal. Stage 2, the FOMO ignites, propels us to $10 as mainstream media kind of catches on. Then we got stage 3, which is the institutional money, that's the bank, the hedge funds, but maybe even that kind of grumpy neighbor who never really waves at you, but pours in, pushing the price up towards $24 or maybe even beyond. He laughs, that's just a fairy tale, and I reply, well, tell that to Bitcoiners in 2013 and the 2013 skeptics, or even the people who mocked Ethereum's ICO. History is a museum of broken limits, and every exhibit starts with someone saying, that's impossible. So let's sprinkle some numbers on the narrative then, shall we? Right? If XRP reaches $10, its market cap hovers around $1 trillion, roughly where Apple stood when people kind of claimed that it had tapped out. Flip to $24 and we're staring at around $2 trillion. A kind of stretch, but it's not unheard of in global markets primed for tokenization. Facebook rebranded to Meta, chasing trillion-dollar metaverse dreams that nobody even seen, right? Now we're living in a world where, tangible visions can command hard cash valuations overnight. However, it's important to note that the market cap does not represent liquidity, doesn't represent inflows, doesn't represent anything. It's just a theoretical idea of value here in crypto. It is ultimately just showing you macro pricing, meaning that the price dictates the market cap in crypto. Okay, that sounds really basic, really simple, but if you understand that actually there's no real kind of liquidity does not equal market cap, your inflows, your capital inflows do not equal market cap, then you have to understand that actually you got to be focusing on what moves price if price is controlling the market cap, and that is supply and demand. Still, I'm not blind to all of the risks, right? And risks, they lurk like potholes at night. So regulation could slam on the brakes, technology could stumble, or sentiment might even pivot faster than a TikTok trend. But investing isn't about certainty, it's all about probabilities and positioning yourself where the asymmetry of reward dwarfs the risk. So in Vegas, they call that counting cards. On Wall Street, they call it alpha. Now, around here, we just call it reading the room before the crowd even knows that there is a party. Now, you can cue the, but how do we act on this kind of montage, but I'm not an editor. So personally, Basically, all I do is I dollar cost average slow and steady, rain or shine, and when I need a platform with deep liquidity and low fees, I hop over to the Blofin crypto exchange. Full disclosure though, the link in the description is an affiliate link, so if you sign up through it and start trading there, it does toss a few coins in the channel's tip jar at no extra cost to yourself. So it does help keep the kind of coffee flowing and the charts, well, glowing. Back to our late night kind of duel then. Dr. Y, ever the kind of academic, wants kind of empirical kind of proof. So I toss him a kind of stat grenade then. Historically, when XRP breaks a multi-year high, it doesn't politely tack on 10%. It erupts hundreds of percent in weeks. Now he counters that with war headlines, and I counter that with the fact that markets often climb in a kind of wall of worry. So if everyone kind of waited for world peace, the Dow, would still be celebrating its first 1,000 points. So we kind of hit the climax around 2 a.m. and I'm kind of, I guess, getting there like a street preacher, Dr. Y, scribbling notes like the last page of his life really depends on it. Then in a moment of silence, he says, maybe I'll be viewing the landscape through a microscope instead of a telescope. And boom, we had a breakthrough. Because sometimes you need to step back to see the mountain range, not just the ant hill. So morning light creeps in, I hang up, and something kind of dawns on me clearer than the kind of sunrise. Whether XRP tops $3.40 or $24, the bigger narrative is unstoppable. Tokenization is the freight train, blockchain the tracks, and the investor emotion, that is the coal. So you can debate the schedule, but the locomotive is still barreling down the line. So what do we do? The humble passengers, right? Well, respect risk. We must do that. We have to diversify and we have to stay curious and never mortgage the future on a single moonshot, right? And we must lean into conversations like the ones that we've kind of, eavesdropped on. And because, iron, sharpeners iron and, ideas evolve through, well, friction. All right, let me land the plane with one last reflection then. I'm not here to kind of tattoo $24 on your trading dashboard. I'm just here to remind you that markets are stories written in numbers. And the next chapter is rarely a kind of photocopy of the last. Whether you are team Dr. Y clinging to $3.40 or team EGRAG strapping in for double digits, the thrill is the discovery. Now I remember that nobody wins by sitting on the sidelines criticizing the players. You should lace up, you should study hard and take swings while you can live with it.